Welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Kelly Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader. Have you ever found yourself mimicking another leader's communication style only to feel like you're wearing someone else's clothing? That uncomfortable feeling isn't only in your head. When we borrow someone else's leadership voice instead of developing our own, we diminish our impact and exhaust ourselves in the process. Welcome back to Communicate to Lead. I'm Kelly Belton, and today I'm going to help you uncover and strengthen your authentic leadership voice, the one that feels as natural as your favorite conversation with a trusted friend, but carries the weight and influence your leadership role demands. We will explore exactly what an authentic leadership voice is and why it matters, especially for women in leadership positions. I'll guide you through identifying your current voice, including where you might be putting on a facade. Then we'll dive into the 4 essential building blocks that will help you develop your authentic leadership voice. And finally, I'll share a practical 30-day plan to start implementing these ideas right away. As women in leadership, we often feel pressure to communicate in ways that don't align with who we truly are. Maybe you've been told you need to be more assertive, less emotional, or more like that charismatic executive everyone admires. What I've discovered in my years of coaching and facilitated leadership and communication workshops is this: the most influential leaders aren't carbon copies of someone else. They are authentically themselves with intentional communication skills. So let's dive in. Let's start by getting clear on what I mean with authentic leadership voice. It's not simply about speaking in a way that feels comfortable. Your authentic leadership voice lies at the intersection of your natural communication tendencies and effective leadership communication. Think of it as your sweet spot where you feel genuinely yourself while still communicating in ways that inspire, motivate, and drive results. There is a persistent myth in leadership development that there is a one-size-fits-all communication style for effective leaders. I see this all the time in my coaching practice. Women who believe they need to speak more assertively, use more data, or mimic the communication style of a particular leader that they admire. Let me give you an analogy I like to use with my clients. Your voice, your leadership voice, is like your wardrobe. Imagine having a closet full of clothes that belong to someone else. Maybe they are beautiful pieces, but they don't quite fit your body type, don't match your lifestyle, and certainly don't express your personal style. So every day you force yourself into these ill-fitting clothes, feeling uncomfortable and self-conscious. That's what happens when you borrow someone else's leadership voice. The cost of this approach is significant. First, you lose credibility. People have remarkable radar for detecting inauthenticity. When your team senses you putting on a voice that isn't your own, it erodes trust. Second, it's exhausting. Maintaining a persona that isn't you takes tremendous energy you could be directing toward actual leadership challenges. And finally, your impact is reduced because you're not leveraging the unique qualities that make you you. So what's the alternative? Well, authenticity creates connection. When you communicate in ways that genuinely reflect who you are while still being intentional and skilled, people lean in. They feel they know the real you. And that foundation of authentic connection is where trust grows and flourishes. I saw this play out dramatically with a client of mine. Let's call her Jamie. As a newly promoted director, she believed she needed to adopt a previous boss's commanding, data-heavy communication style. Her team became increasingly disengaged in meetings, and Jamie felt drained after every presentation. When we started working together, we focused on rediscovering her naturally warm, story-driven approach, but with added structure and clarity. And her team's engagement grew, and she found herself feeling energized rather than depleted by leadership communications that she had to have. That's the power of finding your authentic leadership voice. Before we can develop your authentic leadership voice, we need to understand your current one. It's time for a bit of self-assessment. Are you ready? I invite you to think about different communication scenarios in your leadership role. When do you feel most like yourself? When do you feel like you're putting on an act? Maybe you're completely yourself in one-on-one coaching conversations, but put on what I call a leadership persona during all hands meetings. Or perhaps you're authentic when you are providing feedback, but slip into an unnatural voice when trying to influence senior stakeholders. In my experience coaching men and women, I've noticed some common patterns of inauthentic communication. First, there's the authority mask, adopting an overly formal or authoritative tone because you think that's what leadership should sound like. Then there's excessive hedging, where you're so concerned about coming across as agreeable that you dilute your message with qualifiers and apologies, where you are minimizing your impact and your message. Or the data shield, hiding behind facts and figures without bringing your perspective or values into the conversation because, well, it feels safer. And finally, the charisma copy, trying to replicate another leader's dynamic style when it's not naturally yours. Do any of these sound familiar? Take some time to think about that, because it's also important to understand the influences that have shaped your current leadership voice. These might include early feedback you received about how you communicate, role models who you have admired and perhaps unconsciously mimicked, cultural messages about how women should speak, maybe previous bosses who have rewarded certain communication styles, or professional environments that value particular approaches. Take a moment to reflect on these influences. Which ones have had the strongest impact on how you communicate as a leader today? Now, let's talk about how to recognize when you are slipping into an inauthentic voice. They are usually physical and emotional signals. Physically, you might notice tension in your body, a change in your natural speaking rhythm, or even a literal change in your voice pitch. Emotionally, you might feel anxious, exhausted after communicating, or slightly disconnected from what you're saying. I call these your authenticity alarm bells, and learning to notice them is your first step toward more authentic communication. I experienced this myself earlier in my career. Every time I had to present to executives, I would adopt a more aggressive, rapid-fire style speaking that I thought projected confidence. My authenticity alarm bells were a tight jaw, a serious face, racing heart, and feeling completely drained afterwards. It wasn't until a coach I worked with recorded me and watched it back with me that I realized how unnatural I looked and sounded. That was my wake-up call to find a way to communicate with executive presence that still felt like me. Okay, let's move on to developing the building blocks of your authentic voice. And therefore, creating your authentic leadership voice isn't about discovering something entirely new. It's about intentionally developing what's already naturally yours. As I mentioned, there are 4 essential building blocks we'll explore. Building block number 1 is your communication values. First, let's identify what you genuinely value in communication. This goes deeper than style preferences. It's about what you believe makes communication meaningful and effective. Here's a quick exercise. Think about the best conversation you've had recently. One where you felt the communication was truly excellent. What made it so effective? Was it the clarity and precision of ideas exchanged? The emotional connection established? Maybe the creative energy generated? Did somebody listen respectfully to you? Or the practical outcomes you achieved? Whatever you identified as making that conversation exceptional points to your communication values. For example, if you value emotional connection, authenticity and empathy might be among your core communication values. If you appreciate clear outcomes, efficiency and clarity might be your values. The key is to align your leadership communication with these values. If you value connection, but have been forcing yourself to communicate in a detached, data-only fashion because you think that's more professional, you are working against your authentic voice. One of my clients discovered her core communication values were respect and clarity. And once she recognized this, she stopped trying to be charismatic, high energy. She thought she needed to be, and instead focused on creating communications that were exceptionally clear and demonstrated deep respect for her audience's time and intelligence. Her team's positive response to this more authentic approach encouraged her to always prioritize clarity and respect in her communication. Building block number 2 is focusing on your natural strengths. So let's identify your inherent communication gifts. Each of us has natural strengths and how we connect with others. Maybe you are naturally empathetic, able to sense what others are feeling and address unspoken concerns. Perhaps you have a gift for making complex ideas simple and accessible. Or you might be especially skilled at asking questions that open up new perspectives. Some leaders naturally use humor effectively, while others have a calming presence that help teams navigate stress. The key is to leverage these strengths rather than focusing on fixing what you perceive as a weakness or trying to develop strengths that don't come naturally to you. That's number 2. Here's building block number 3, your genuine stories. So this building block is all about finding and developing stories that reflect who you truly are. Your authentic leadership voice needs authentic content, and nothing is more powerful than your genuine experiences and the insights you've gleaned from them. Think about the experiences that have shaped your leadership perspective. These don't all have to be dramatic career achievements. Often the most relatable stories come from challenges, mistakes, and everyday moments of realization. I worked with a senior leader who was trying to drive a major change initiative, but was meeting a lot of resistance. She had been using data and logical arguments without success. When we explored her genuine connection to the initiative, she shared a personal story about how similar changes had affected her own career trajectory early on. When she shared this authentic story with her team with the right amount of vulnerability, it shifted the conversation from resistance to engagement. Your stories don't always need to be personal, though. They can be customer stories, market observations, or historical examples that genuinely resonate with you. The key is that they reflect what truly matters to you, not what you think should matter to a leader in your position. And then lastly, building block number 4 is your leadership context. This final building block acknowledges that while authenticity is essential, effective leadership communication also requires adaptation to different contexts. This doesn't mean becoming inauthentic. It means being intentionally flexible while remaining true to yourself. So think of it this way. You're still you, whether you're having tea with a friend, speaking at a conference, or running a team meeting. But you naturally adjust your communication to fit each context. The key is adapting your authentic voice to different leadership scenarios without abandoning it altogether. This might mean emphasizing different aspects of your natural style for different audiences or situations. For example, if you value thoroughness and detail, you don't need to abandon this when speaking to executives who prefer you to be brief. Instead, you might provide a concise summary upfront that reflects your clarity of thinking, with details available for those who want to dig a little deeper or who want to see how you got to that concise summary. Or if you're naturally warm and relationship focused, you don't need to become cold and distant in crisis situations. Instead, you might briefly acknowledge the human aspect before moving efficiently into solution mode. So the question to ask yourself is not how would a leader communicate in the situation, but rather how can I, with my unique voice and values, communicate effectively in this situation. Got it? Okay, time to turn these insights into action with a practical 30-day plan to develop your authentic leadership voice. Week 1 focuses on awareness. For 7 days, keep a simple communication journal. After important leadership conversations, note the following. 1, how authentic did you feel on a scale from 1 to 10? 2, what triggered any shifts away from your authentic voice? 3, which of your natural strengths were you able to leverage? And finally, number 4, which of your communication values were you able to honor? Reflect on these 4 questions. Jot down some notes so that you can keep track of that. This awareness alone will begin shifting your approach because you will dive deeper into your authentic leadership voice. That's week 1. In week 2, choose one building block to focus on developing. If you identify that you rarely bring genuine stories into leadership conversations, commit to incorporating one authentic story or example into a meeting every day or maybe every other day. Or if you've realized that you've been ignoring your natural strength of empathy, intentionally bring that warmth into your conversations. That's week number 2. Moving on to week number 3. And in this week, it's all about gathering feedback, but with an important caveat. You are not looking for general feedback on how you communicate or how to communicate better. You are specifically asking trusted colleagues, when do you experience my communication as most authentic and effective? Their answers will help you identify when your authentic voice is breaking through and making an impact. And lastly, week number 4. In this week, work on balancing growth with authenticity in challenging communication scenarios. Identify one challenging situation, perhaps presenting to senior leaders or giving difficult feedback, and plan how to approach it in a way that feels authentic to you while stretching your skills. Throughout this entire process, please make sure to set realistic expectations. This might be controversial, but finding and strengthening your authentic leadership voice is a gradual evolution, not a sudden transformation. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming more intentionally yourself. I've seen leaders make remarkable progress with this approach. One client described it as finally taking a heavy coat off I didn't realize I was wearing. The energy she previously spent maintaining an inauthentic leadership persona was redirected into actually leading and engaging with her team with remarkable results for both her satisfaction and her effectiveness as a leader. As we wrap up today's episode, let's recap what we covered. Your authentic leadership voice is the intersection of natural communication tendencies and effective leadership communication. It's about finding a completely new voice, but refining and intentionally using your own. We've explored the 4 essential building blocks: your communication values, your natural strengths, your genuine stories, and adapting your leadership context without losing yourself. And we've outlined a practical 30-day plan to start developing your authentic voice right away by focusing on 1 week at a time. Finding your authentic leadership voice isn't about becoming someone new. It's about bringing your full self to your leadership role with intention and skill. It's about recognizing that the unique way you naturally communicate, when refined and deployed thoughtfully, is actually your greatest leadership asset. If you're ready to accelerate your journey to finding your authentic leadership voice, I have some great news. I am currently offering free 20-minute leadership clarity calls where we can identify what's holding your authentic voice back and create a personalized roadmap for growth. I only have a few spots remaining this month, so don't miss this opportunity. Click the link at the top of the show notes to schedule your call today. Your team deserves the gift of your authentic leadership voice. And my friend, so do you. Until next Thursday, I am Keely, reminding you that great communication is the foundation of inspiring leadership. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember to communicate to lead.